Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Spit Takes. I'm your host, Spittle, a.k.a. Jens Anderson, and we're going to be talking to you tonight about a really cool new show that I have just finished watching. It's a Netflix original, Marvel's Daredevil, and man, was it badass. Let me tell you a little bit about my knowledge about Daredevil before we get started. First off, I didn't really read a lot of the comics when I was growing up. I read the occasional comic and certainly saw him cross over. Obviously he's resides in New York City, so I know he's going to run up against Spider-Man sometime, or run into Spider-Man sometimes, or maybe the Punisher. But I was really more into characters like that, Spider-Man, the X-Men, more overt kind of superpowered characters that had some kind of mutation or more, I don't know, a power that could more physically manifest, or more strongly themed like that. Daredevil was kind of like this niche character to me, where he was like, dealing with Hell's Kitchen specifically, and he didn't have any kind of like huge overt superpowers. He didn't turn into a big green Hulk. He didn't shoot, solar beams out of his eyes. He didn't have wings on his back. He just was this blind guy that, had, like Peter Parker, bit by a radioactive spider and kind of got Spider-Man the powers that Spider-Man has. He had these chemicals kind of splashed in his eye, and he was then able to like kind of see with echolocation. He certainly has a lot of martial arts training, so he was a badass fighter. But there was just something about the character that just didn't really click to me when I was younger. I did see the movie, of course, with Ben Affleck, Jennifer Gardner, Michael Garner, and Michael Duncan Clark, which is really probably my biggest exposure to Daredevil prior to this series. So the reason I tell you this is because what I'm going to talk about are my impressions of Daredevil, Matt Murdock, and the franchise on the Netflix series alone. I don't have the deep knowledge going back of, what happened to various issues and other story arcs and things like that. This is just my impression of the show. And speaking of that, spoiler alert, you better get out of here if you haven't seen it yet, or if you're potentially worried about me doing a reveal. I'm not going through the season in order. I might talk about stuff that's going to be happening, like later in the series, right now up front. So be prepared. If you're not wanting any spoilers, you better get out of here, because that's what Spit Takes is all about, my take on this stuff. So let's talk about it a little bit. First of all, it's really interesting. You kind of might come into this, especially with a marquee like this, and think, oh, it's going to be Daredevil right off the bat in this kind of fancy costume. Well, it's not, actually. It spends a lot of time building up to that moment. In fact, you're not going to see this costume until episode 15. The last episode, the finale, is when he finally dons the red outfit. For the most of it, he's actually running around and known as the Black Mask. He's a vigilante. He's very well known. It starts with like whispers and rumors on the street of him being a really good Samaritan and helping people out. And then he becomes more public, going on, even framed by the Kingpin later to be maybe responsible for some of the bad things that the Kingpin is doing, more like a scapegoat. But he's running around with this kind of like black mask that's covering over his eyes and his face, and he's got on this black outfit with combat boots. In fact, there's a joke when Foggy Nelson, kind of his law partner who's in the dark about Matt's secret vigilante life, finds out about it, and he's going kind of through his clothes. He's like, where do you get these? And Matt's like, on the internet. So he just basically has like sports equipment and kind of combat equipment that he's gotten off the internet. As a result, he's constantly getting shot and stabbed and cut, and he's totally needing to be patched up all the time by Rosario Dawson's character, Claire Temple, who is a nurse, and they kind of fall in love a little bit and have a little bit of a fling before they part ways because of the danger. She gets captured by some Russian dudes so they can get to Matt Murdock, the Black Mask, and she it's really dangerous. So the two of them kind of step apart a little bit. But the series starts out, and there's something really bad going on. And you don't know what. There's a group of criminals, a group of Russians, a group of a Chinese lady, and a Japanese guy. The Japanese guy represents the Hand, who's the Japanese kind of Yakuza. The Chinese lady represents a heroin ring, and the Russians are distributors. So the three of them, along with a financial guy on Wall Street, who is like kind of the money guy and sheltering and moving all the money around, are working for somebody, their employer, who throughout the whole thing they never say his name ever. He's certainly not called the Kingpin yet, so they don't have a nickname for him. But they just don't utter his name, and he has a kind of a liaison who is played by James Wesley, played by Toby Leonard Moore, who is this like, kind of like second in command to Kingpin. But it's Kingpin if you know anything about Daredevil at all. Even my little knowledge, I was like, it's Kingpin. It's totally Kingpin working this behind the scenes, Wilson Fisk. And so what's going on is the Chinese lady is providing the money, so through the heroin, and the Russians are distributing it and also doing like, slave trading and child trafficking, and then the Wall Street guy is shuffling the money around. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to buy up Hell's Kitchen so that they can actually, in this bizarre, weird way, kind of rule Hell's Kitchen and clean it up, make it a safe place. It's sort of like this twisted way of finding order, right? It would almost be a dystopian kind of thing if there were any kind of brainwashing involved. I suppose the use of the media that Kingpin does could be tagged as that. So Murdock is starting out on this vigilante life, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And he's opened up a law firm in Hell's Kitchen with his friend Foggy, who doesn't know his identity, but they went to college together. And their first case is really defending Karen Page, played by Deborah Ann Woll, you can see here, of True Blood fame. And they get her off the hook and protect her from this company. And then she comes to work for them as their secretary. And the three of them now have this kind of champion for the downtrodden kind of law firm, which is really a front for both Karen Page and Matt Murdock to be investigating Wilson Fisk and everything that he's involved with. In fact, Karen Page gets a guy named Ben Urich involved, who is this reporter. And it's great. They always talk about this is actually part of the extended Marvel universe. So Ben Urich did a lot of stories involving the first Avengers defense of New York City and when they first came together. So there's a lot of mention of that and a lot of tie-in to that from Ben Urich, the reporter. And Matt Murdock even kind of mentions it a few times. So do the police. But the police are like, a lot of them are corrupt. They're working for the Kingpin as well. So it's a very dangerous place to be in Hell's Kitchen. And Matt Murdock is trying to figure it out. Matt Murdock is played by Charlie Cox. And he does, in fact, let's take a look at the cast really quick here, if you don't mind. Charlie Cox plays Matt Murdock, does a great job. I really like his Matt Murdock. If I were to compare it to Ben Affleck, who also played the role, I didn't like Ben Affleck's Matt Murdock as much as I like Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock. I did like Ben Affleck when he was actually in the Daredevil outfit and doing all the action scenes and stuff like that. I thought he had a good look. I thought it was really appropriate. In fact, I liked how it all opened up in the movie with him getting in the isolation tank and popping the pain pills and, having all the wounds on him and stuff like that. This show takes a much different approach. In fact, his training that he gets from Stick, who is played by Scott Glenn, is really cool. And they talk about meditation and how he can meditate and actually accelerate his healing ability. And so that's how it's really funny. You see him take these egregious wounds and, Claire Temple patches him up, but they heal really quickly on the show. Like you can see them going away really rapidly, even though not a lot of time is passing. So that they were very consistent about that. And you kind of ask yourself, why the hell doesn't he have better protection and body armor? He's just like walking around in literally this kind of, skin tight outfit here that just has no protection whatsoever. And he's constantly getting cut. Amazing choreography, fight choreography. Really like what they did with that stuff. I wonder how much of that Charlie Cox actually did and how much of that was, his stunt doubles and stuff. But it was really well done. And what I loved about this, too, was that they didn't overdo his, extras, his senses, his radar. They called it a world on fire. How does he see the world? It's like a world on fire. His smell, his ears, tactile stuff, air pressure and vibrations on his skin. actually paint this picture of what the world looks like. And he actually can see people's faces in great detail. It's just there's no real color. There's no real light to it, right? In fact, his apartment's very cool. He got this great apartment on the cheap because they put up this giant neon sign that was like flashing all the time. Not even neon. It was like a digital kind of modern day sign you'd see in Times Square. And it made for some really great moments of lighting and mood inside his apartment and everything. But he can't see any of that. He just sees this kind of world on fire. And they really only show it twice, which I respected a lot. They just sort of showed that he was capable by showing him doing cool stuff. And that was really awesome. I really, really enjoyed that. Who knows what'll happen next season? Maybe they'll actually do a little more of that. He starts out really with no weapons. He's just sort of punching folks. Eventually, he starts picking up sticks once in a while, which is kind of his signature thing. They never had a cord attached to them, but toward the end, when he finally gets his suit and he has his weapons, he actually does get these weapons that kind of interlocked and do the whole thing where he can make a bow stick or he can make a scream of sticks out of it, and he has some really cool fighting opportunities there. Let's talk about the story arc in general, though. Obviously, Daredevil factors into this. I'll be mentioning him a lot. Secondary story arcs are with the secretary, Karen Page, and his partner, Foggy Nelson. They're doing a lot of stuff to sort of support him and get involved of bringing a lot of narrative and exposition about the movement of the case and the workings of what's going on in the real world, while Matt is running around in the shadows, showing us the action portion of this. So both sides of that work really well together to give the viewer everything they need to kind of piece together and have a really, the overall narratives and story and where it's going, and still have this really good balance between, action and the hero doing his thing without making him, have to talk too much and be overly verbose and expositional about things. We handle that from the Foggy Nelson, Bob Urich, and Karen Page side of things. So great addition there. Then you see kind of the conscience of the show. So they're basically the investigation. They're the brains. They're the knowledge. They tie in everything that has to do with like advancing the story like that. Is handled there. And then Rosario Dawson's character, Claire Temple, is Matt's conscience. She's the one that's kind of helping him question, is he going too far? How far down how deep down into the depths is he going to sink to get what he wants? He tortures people. He beats people. He takes all this punishment and damage. And she's there to sort of go through that for him. She's his heart, right? So Foggy, Bob, Karen, his brain, Claire, his heart. And then you have the shadows themselves, which are Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, eventually his wife, Vanessa Fisk. You have James Wesley, his assistant. You have the Chinese lady that's running the heroin ring, the Russians brothers who are doing the distribution of the heroin, the corrupt Wall Street guy who's covering up all the money and putting it back into Wilson Fisk and all their accounts. You have the guy who is who is actually the Japanese guy, the ninja from The Hand. What was his name? Nobu. You have him as well, kind of being the muscle. Maybe some mysticism going on too. Is something going on with this kid they were trying to bring in that would like release a plague. But you can see that, and then you have so they're the shadows. They're the threat, and then of course you have Matt Murdock's old mentor, who found him when he was very young and kind of opened up the possibilities of his powers and helped him come to grips with them, and it started him on his way of becoming a fighter, who is Stick. And he comes in for an episode, maybe two. It might be just one episode. And you really see where his ability comes from. So all of these people and these groups like represent really cool elements that factor into kind of keeping the story going. And they blend really well together to create just a wonderful tapestry to the entire show throughout all the episodes. Just beautifully paced throughout. Matt gets to take out a lot of his enemies. He's pretty brutal throughout, but he does learn to kind of control it toward the end. Vincent D'Onofrio plays an amazing Wilson Fisk, or Kingpin. In fact, we don't see him until many episodes in, and he's in an art gallery. And he buys a painting from who's going to be his future wife, Vanessa Fisk. And it's just this white painting called like Rabbit in a Snowstorm or something like that. And it's got all this texture on it. And he's sort of like is just staring at it. He's got these weird nervous tics, and he's very weird about it. And he buys it. He puts it in his bedroom, and he's having nightmares from time to time. He wakes up and he just stares at that painting on the wall. And then you realize why as they go through his twisted kind of morality. The Kingpin actually looks at himself as a very violent and recognizes himself as a very violent and brutal man. I mean, he's very upfront with that with his new love interest, Vanessa. At least on this show, he is a very brutal man. But he looks at himself as a savior, almost like a dark savior, so to speak, of Hell's Kitchen. He's trying to do good. If you're gonna make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs, kind of thing, right? Only to like the extreme. He's like slaughtering chickens and then squeezing the eggs out so he can make his omelet. It's pretty, he goes seriously very, very far. First time we really see him go off, he's confronting one of the Russian brothers, going to eliminate them. And it's always got some great plans going on and manipulations of knowing how these things are going to play out. Very smart, brutal man playing things against each other. And he just smashes this one guy's head clear off, like after multiple hits through a door. And this is where you kind of first see, too, that, he's not sort of invulnerable, almost like kind of like, he reminded me a lot in a way of Brick from the Arrow series, how they were handling him last season. But he's not invulnerable. He actually has a suit. There's some kind of special material in his suits, because when the Russian guy like cuts him during the fight, you see, he's got body armor on, but it even looks like a suit, but it's really body armor. And this is really important because that leads us to meet a guy later. What was his name again? It's Melvin Potter. Who will eventually play Gladiator, I guess, next season. He's a villain. And you can see the saw blade, which is his sort of signature, like sort of threw it at one point during his fight with Daredevil when Daredevil tracks him down because he knows Wilson Fisk has some armor, and he finally realizes he needs something too. So he gets this guy, Melvin Potter, to actually make him body armor, some kind of outfit, a symbol, right? That was very Batman-y what they did right there, becoming a symbol. And he gets in the last episode, he finally goes and gets this thing, and he ends up becoming, and donning that outfit. And it is obviously this Daredevil outfit right here. And it was very cool. Ultimately, Kingpin's plans are thwarted. He's outed as a murderer. He is arrested. He murders Bob Urich. He gets arrested shortly after that. But his wife, as he's getting arrested, he proposes to Vanessa, and she is taken away with his helicopter because he's unable. His plans to escape, his machinations to get out of there, they fail because Daredevil captures him, and she goes off. And he's left in prison. And the last thing you see is him staring at the wall. And I forgot to explain why he stares at the wall. We had a flashback at one point of Wilson Fisk as a kid. And it was awesome seeing he had an abusive father. His mother was beaten a lot. And he, and this is key to his sort of downfall, he is trying to turn the media against Daredevil. And like he's some kind of angel and Daredevil's the villain. And Deborah Ann Woll's character, Karen Page, and Bob Urich, they go find his mom somewhere. Okay, they investigate and find that his mom, Wilson Fisk's mom, is still alive, even though she's reported dead. And she confesses to them what happened with him when he was a kid. So we saw this flashback that his father was running for city councilman, and he didn't get it, but he borrowed a lot of money from the mob or some loan shark. And so he was going to meet this guy, and his wife kind of told him, "I told you not to do that." And he he teaches Wilson Fisk earlier, he gets his son gets beaten up and he was crying because his dad lost the election, and his dad takes him to go beat up that kid, and he just makes Wilson kick the kid while he's down, kicking him over and over and over again. And so finally he gets really mad. He makes Wilson stare at this wall, and you realize the wall has this kind of cheap ass plaster on it. It's very textured, very rough. And it looks like the painting that he's always staring at throughout the episode. And you're like, oh, that's why he stares at the wall. His dad makes him stare at the wall and says, think about the man that you want to be, and just stare at that wall and think about the man you want to be until I tell you to stop. And he goes and he starts beating his wife, right? Wilson's mom. Wilson just has enough. He takes a hammer and he kills his dad. And he just smashes his head in multiple times with the hammer. And then his mom helps him cut up the body and like take it away. And they cover it up because everybody thought that this guy owed money to the loan shark. And he probably got killed by the loan shark. Well, lo and behold, it was actually Wilson Fisk. And they learn this later. And so, Bob Urich finds out and then Kingpin finds out they talked to his mom. Karen Page ends up killing James Wesley when he tries to threaten her. And then that devastates Wilson Fisk. It was his best friend and his like right-hand man. And so he finds out that Bob Urich talked to his mother, and this probably led to the death of, his buddy and murders Bob Urich. And all this gets exposed. And he's arrested. And that's when Daredevil eventually catches him as he's trying to make his escape, because like he's got like tactical SWAT teams on his paycheck, and they all come to try and break him out, just murdering police. It's brutal. So he ends up, last scene of Kingpin is him staring at that wall. But his wife got away, so we know he's going to get out. His wife's going to break him out. She's complicit to this whole thing. She's crazy too. Predictions for next year, I understand that, obviously I think that we'll see Gladiator. Stick goes back and reports to some guy who I have no idea who it is, but he's got this big yoked up guy who obviously Stick respects. He's got all these scars on his back and everything. Kind of reminded me of King Snake from, Batman or Robin. But obviously different universe. But it's somebody cool, and I don't know who it is. But I imagine he asked Stick if Matt Murdock was ready for the war. So we'll see what that amounts to. And then obviously I heard this, and I see it right here, quite frankly, that I'll show you right now, that Frank Castle is, where is it? Frank Castle. Where is he? Bam. Frank Castle and Elektra Natchios, played by John Barenthal and Elode Young. Maybe it was Silk. No, it couldn't have been Silk. Scott Glenn, Stick. Who's Silk? I don't know who that is. But that guy looks way too old to be the guy I would have thought. So yeah, Stick was great. Scott Glenn was really good. I don't know. Oh, Stone. Maybe it was this dude. Ooh. I don't know who Stone is. But that looks like it could be the dude, although he had hair on, to be honest with you. We'll have to see who that. One episode in 2015. I think that's who it is. Who the heck is Stone? Content on this page from Elektra 2005. Interesting. Yeah. Marvel's Daredevil. Stick. It was in the Stick episode, too. That's who it was. David Soboleff. All right. Who I think is also a voice. Yeah, okay. So that's who that is. Anyway, and then we have Frank Castle. This is your Punisher next year. Oops, that's not what I wanted. That's not your Punisher. This is your Punisher next year on the show right there. That's Frank. That's going to be Frank Castle and Daredevil. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm really interested in it. I'm definitely going to check out the show next season. Like I said, I wasn't into those comics when I was younger, but I'm loving this show. It's definitely worth checking out. Obviously, I'd like to hear your thoughts about it, or kind of like what stuck with you during the entire thing. And please leave me your comments below. Patrons, thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it. Thank you everybody else for watching. If you are new here, first time seeing it, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. If you want to follow me on Twitter and get to know when the live streams are, you can also follow me on Twitch for the live streams there. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays regularly, and then impromptu other than that. Spyt Takes comes out whenever it gets to like kind of a half season milestone, or a season finale. I'm covering entire seasons now instead of episodes. So if you want to check those out, you can also see more past episodes of Spyt Takes and how the show has changed in the playlist below. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm Spittle, and I'm out.